Health officials attributed the increase to greater contact as people returned to work after the summer holidays. One of Australia's most prestigious prizes for art has been won by an Indigenous artist for the first time in the award's 99-year history. Vincent Namatjira claimed the Archibald Prize for a portrait of himself and the Australian rules footballer Adam Goodes. Mr. Goodes was retired 5 years ago after receiving persistent racial abuse. Accepting the prize, the artist said this was an important moment for Australian art. He also made clear it had been a long time coming.
What an honour it is to be the first Indigenous winner of the Archibald Prize. It only took 99 years. I'm so proud to be the first, but I'm also to acknowledge all the Indigenous finalists and Indigenous hitters for the Archibald this year and in the past years.
A veteran Indian film singer, S.P. Balasubramaniam, often simply known as SPB, has died in Chennai at the age of 74. He was admitted to hospital in early August after testing positive for the coronavirus. SPB recorded more than 40,000 songs in a career spanning 50 years. BBC News.
明天的希望无限，听见台北的人情味。全世界活力在线，全都在台北 Radio。
公民总主笔，
方恩格时间。
当家抢先报，你不能不知道。
在今天晚上公民总主笔方恩格的时间当中，我们邀请到的来宾是奥地利商务代表办事处副代表史丹义。在节目中，我们将要来分享11月即将在台湾举行的奥地利科技日的活动，奥地利的全球能源奖，以及台澳之间的科技产业连结，红牛等奥地利品牌在台湾受欢迎的程度，还有到奥地利度假等等的议题。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？谁当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？我当家。你当家？我当家。
我当家。
到底谁当家？你来当家。
Welcome to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. I'm the host, Ross Darrell Feingold. Our guest today is Stefan Stantejsky. I hope I pronounced it correctly, Stefan.
Yes, Ross, you pronounce it perfectly.
Oh, thank you. Stefan is the Deputy Director of the Austrian Commercial Office in Taipei, also known as Advantage Austria, which is promoting trade between Austria and countries around the world, including Taiwan. So, Stefan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ross, for having me. It's great to be on your show.
Before we talk in detail about Austria-Taiwan trade relations, tell us a bit about yourself and growing up in Austria.
All right, so I come from Lower Austria. Lower Austria is the province surrounding Vienna in the east of Austria. And even though Austria is not a very big country, it's roughly two times the size of Taiwan. It's very diverse, but both in terms of geography and in terms of culture. So in the west, you have more mountain with the beautiful, mountain scenery and the lakes and the rivers. In the east, closer to Vienna, is more industrialized, and that's where I grew up.
When you were growing up, did you hear a lot about Asia? Was this a part of the world that people were already discussing? Was it part of your younger education? Did you hear about China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea at that time?
So to be honest with you, I mean, when I was a child, it was still the time in, 80s, 90s, when we still had the conflict between, communist regimes in the East and the West, led by the United States. And when I was a child, for example, Germany was still divided between, the communist East and the Western part. And so for that reason, our focus in that time was more on, the vicinity, on Central Eastern Europe, which was still communist, and Western Europe, Germany, France, and the United States. So only at a later stage, maybe during my high school times, I got more acquainted with the Asian region.
And when you were in high school, what were you thinking about doing? I mean, were you thinking that one day you'd be a trade diplomat traveling around the world, or did you have your heart on doing something else?
Well, so actually, when I was a child, it was still not as easy to travel internationally as it is now, right? And especially Asia. I remember my father, he worked as a businessman, so he was for some time able to travel abroad, and many times he went to Asia, including Japan. But at that time, Japan had the image of being an extremely, it's very difficult to, in terms of cost of living. So as a tourist, it would have been very difficult to go to Japan. And for that reason, in general, because traveling was not so easy, I made my only trip abroad, I think, when I was like 14, 15 years old. Yet, through my father, I had already experienced, this wish for traveling abroad sometime in the future. And I think this also influenced my job decision later on in life, that I wanted to explore, have the possibility to explore more of the world.
You received an undergraduate university degree in law in Austria, and you also obtained a master's degree in international affairs in Geneva, in Switzerland. Now that you've been in Taiwan for a couple of years, what do you observe differently about studying in Taiwan, or university education system in Taiwan, and compared to your own experiences as a student in Austria or Switzerland?
Well, first of all, my university education in Vienna was already quite different from the education that I received in Geneva, because in Vienna I studied at Vienna University, which has a very good law school. But at least in my time, it was still rather traditional when it comes to the teaching styles. It was mostly about, learning by heart and then reproducing at the exam. Whereas in Geneva, at the Graduate Institute, their faculty is set up basically, or 2/3 of their professors come from the United States. So the teaching style is very American. Therefore, what they focus on is usually that you prepare a paper in advance and then you discuss it with the professor and the other students in class. And in my point of view, that's the better approach to studying, because you learn how to argue, you learn how to express yourself, how to be creative, how to build an argument. And so now here in Taiwan, I've been at 2-3 universities also talking about trade relations between Taiwan and Austria. And from my experience, Taiwanese young people, they're very bright, they're very motivated, very intelligent people, but the teaching style is still more on the traditional side, so more similar to my experience back in Vienna and less to the more modern teaching style that I've learned at the Graduate Institute in Geneva and that they teach at US universities, I believe.
Yeah, I'm going to make an assumption for some of the people in the audience. You went to university in Vienna and graduate school in Geneva. This doesn't sound really difficult. I mean, these are like such beautiful places to live and to study. How could you take yourself away from such nice places in Europe?
Yes, I would agree. I mean, Vienna has been voted the most livable city for many times in a row. And Switzerland, especially Geneva, is a beautiful place. I mean, you've got the lake, you've got the mountains, you've got the beautiful French culture there. It's a very international city, so you meet very interesting people. Yet, at the same time, I mean, Europe is all of European countries are different in themselves. None is the same, but it's still more or less one similar culture. And for us coming from Europe, it's very exciting to be able to go to Asia, for example, where the culture is very different. People have a different way of thinking, of approaching things. Food is different. So I think it's simply about the excitement of seeing something new and totally different.
Now, you mentioned that when you were growing up, it was still the Cold War era. The Iron Curtain was still keeping Eastern Europe locked up. But not long ago, you studied in China. You studied at Renmin University in Beijing. What was it like studying in a communist country, having grown up towards the end of the Cold War?
Right. So actually, I started studying Chinese during my master's studies in Geneva. So I was studying for 1 year there. And at the end of that year, I had the opportunity, I got a scholarship to go to Renmin Dashui to do a summer school in Chinese studies, basically. And I have to say, I mean, the campus was very nice. It's big, a lot of greenery and trees. I would imagine the campus to be similar maybe to the US-American campuses from what I've seen in movies. Yet from the infrastructure, the buildings, I was not that impressed because I would have expected everything to be like super modern, yet it was, it was okay, but some parts a little bit run down. And also the teaching style, again, it was very traditional. So even though I talked to the students there, and it seems to be like hyper competitive to get a study place, right, to be able to study there. And my university, I think there's just Tsinghua University and Beida, they're even more prestigious, but then Renmin comes in third. So you basically have the elite of the country studying there. Yet, while they are also bright and talented people, I think on average, the teaching style is still so traditional that they learn by heart and then reproduce. That on average, I would say if I compare the Chinese students with our European studies, I think in terms of academic achievement and quality, European students are in no respect, less capable than the Chinese counterparts.
Now, you've lived, in addition to China and Switzerland and your home country of Austria, in Fiji and Poland, France, China, Taiwan. What's something that you could say is you always found in all these places as something that you liked about? Is there anything that always stands out about a place that makes it a great place to live?
Right. So of course, every country is different, and every country has its different things that you like a lot. But maybe when we start in France, because this was when I was living for the first time for a longer period of time abroad, I remember I was, very fascinated by the elegance of the people, the clothes they wear, by the great tradition that the country has, and La Grande Nation, right? There's so much culture and museums and libraries to go to. And also the French language. I mean, in my view, it's maybe the most beautiful language in the world. And then, for example, because you mentioned Fiji, so this was one country which is so different from Austria because it's literally on the other side of the globe from Austria. And while Austria is a landlocked country, Fiji is surrounded by ocean, right? So it cannot get more different or exotic for me. And but again, people were like super friendly there, very hospitable. And what I liked particularly is this relaxed attitude towards work. So I remember during the week, and especially on Fridays was called Bulla Day. And Bulla means like, cheers or like take it easy. And everybody on Bulla Day, even the president and the diplomats, were wearing those Hawaii shirts, which in Fiji are called Bulla shirts with the flower patterns on it, So this easygoing, laissez-faire approach to work, I cherished a lot.
Oh, that would be great if we had that in Taiwan, wouldn't it?
Now we could propose it. I'm all for it.
This year, everybody is, of course, concerned about COVID-19. How about your family and friends back home in Austria? How have they been managing or dealing with the COVID-19 situation?
Well, so my family and friends, thank God, they're doing well. My family's home is some 1 hour drive outside of Vienna, and it's more on the countryside. So for them, it's easy. They've got a garden, and they can just hang out there. Not a big problem. But for Austrian society in general, it's a bit trying times. I mean, we've had the first wave in April, May, and then we had a lockdown. This was eased in summer, but now there's a second wave. And even though if we compare to other countries, even in Europe, I think Austria has been consistently doing quite good. Yet, I mean, of course, now it's second wave, and again, social distancing rules, and again, more restrictions. So it's trying times for people in general, and especially for business community, right?
And when they ask you about the situation in Taiwan, when you're speaking to family and friends in Austria, what do you tell them?
So first of all, in beginning of the year, when the virus broke out, everybody in Austria was concerned because they see Taiwan as, being very close to China geographically. And so people were concerned, and some even said, we should leave Taiwan and return to Austria for safety reasons. But then, I mean, as it turned out, the situation changed, and now Taiwan is one of the most safe places in the world. And these days, I'm just, sending my friends some nice photos from Taiwan, me hanging out at the beach, or, being at a function, a public event attended by many people. And most of my friends back in Austria, they cannot believe that we're able to do this, right? They say, you're so irresponsible. I mean, you have to be social distancing yourselves. And I just say, well, it's super safe here. And the government has done a great job at keeping the virus out of Taiwan.
Do you think this will cause more Austrians to live outside of Europe, maybe come to places like Taiwan where the virus situation was better managed?
It could be. I mean, now because of the way how Taiwan managed the corona crisis, they received a lot of positive news coverage in Europe and also in Austria. And as Austrians in general, since the country is not so big, we've always liked to travel abroad because tourism is very important for us and also export industry. And therefore, I can imagine that once it's possible to travel again and travel to Taiwan, that more Austrians are willing to come here.
Now, I also learned something very unique about you, Stefan. You're a black belt in a type of martial art. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so I think many young guys, I suppose in the US, in Europe, when I was a teenager, I got into martial arts and also this Eastern philosophy. I got fascinated by it. And so, but back then in Vienna, there were not many different styles that you could practice. It was basically only Japanese judo or Korean taekwondo. And so I was starting at around 14, 15 with taekwondo for some years. But taekwondo is, in my view, not a very complete style. It's basically just leg kicks, right? So other parts like punches or grappling or, throwing your opponent is missing. And so then when I was in Fiji, there was a very good Hapkido school. And Hapkido is also a Korean style of martial arts, but it's more complete. It has all these like other techniques that I just mentioned. And so therefore, during my time in Fiji, I practiced very hard. And yes, and actually it's funny because the Fijian people, they're those, huge, muscular, massive type of people that you would see in Australia rugby league playing.
Yeah, they're famous for that.
And so, I mean, and that's what the average person looks like, right? And also the people you train with. And me, on the other hand, I'm, average size European. So in the beginning, it was a bit scary when they threw me to the ground and grappled me. But I survived, and there I am.
Do you get a chance to practice in Taiwan?
So here, I will actually focus on Wing Chun, this Kung Fu style, which comes from Hong Kong or China, because there's great teachers here. And so for 1.5 years now, I've been going to a school on Nanjing Donglu. It's a great teacher and it's great students, and I'm just curious of finding out a different way of martial arts.
So when you're promoting Austrian exports, do you ever use the martial arts? You tell companies in Taiwan, you better buy these Austrian products or else?
Well, there might be some places in the world where you would have to use that, but I'm quite certain Taiwan is not one of them where you would have to use these type of tactics.
Tell us a little bit about Advantage Austria, and maybe start off by telling us how is that different from the Austrian office or the different entities that Austria has here in Taipei?
Right. So in Taiwan, for historical reasons, we have 2 Austrian offices here. So on the one hand, there's the Austrian commercial office where I work, and then there's also the Austrian office. And our office was actually the first one which got established here in the early 1980s, and it's still the bigger one to this day. But we focus primarily on, trade-related aspects. We focus on trade, commerce, and investment, whereas our colleagues at the Austrian office, they deal with, consular issues, culture, and also political affairs. And in daily life, we work very closely together, of course, but we are still separate entities and separate offices.
We were talking a little earlier about COVID-19, the challenges that created for business, challenges it created for travel and for buyers to come from Austria to Taiwan, for example. But are there any types of business or trade that actually improved in 2020 between Austria and Taiwan?
Yes, it's interesting. I actually had a look at the trade statistics earlier today. And so if you look at the export side, the Taiwanese export side to Austria, those products that have increased are related to ICT. So, for example, notebooks and computers and maybe smartphones. and also bicycles. And the reason being that, in times of COVID-19 and of lockdowns, people want to communicate more online. So therefore they need a good new equipment. And also they want to ride their bike instead of standing in cramped public transport facilities. And now when we look at the Austrian export side to Taiwan, we see that specialized machinery for the semiconductor industry has gone up.
Why has that gone up? Because the IT hardware are making more products?
Exactly, for the same reason, basically. Because simply ICT products are more in demand and semiconductors are used for the final ICT product, right?
Who are Austria's competitors for selling those products to Taiwan? Which other countries? US, obviously.
Yeah, US. There's a couple of European countries which have also specialized machinery, like I think the Belgians, the Dutch, the Germans, French, others. But usually it's that each country has a competitive advantage in one very specific area of machinery. So the machines that the Austrian company sells, they're among the world's best. So,
I wouldn't expect you to say anything else.
Right. No, and then in a different area, the Belgians are better, right? And so, but there's this whole production process of a semiconductor. It's very sophisticated and long, right? And therefore, for the different steps, you need different equipment. And each country has different companies which are specialized on one of those production steps.
Are there any products or types of trade that before 2020 you had hoped to promote specifically this year, but because of COVID-19, you were unable to realize those plans?
Yes, so one area is tourism. So in 2019, we had a total of more than 280 Taiwanese travelers coming to Austria. And this makes Austria one of the most popular tourism destinations in Europe. And so we were hoping to build on this success. There have been daily direct flights from EVA Air and China Airlines to Vienna, which have now been more or less suspended.
Both airlines each had one flight per day?
Yes. And so we saw and we still see a lot of potential in Taiwanese incoming tourists to Austria. But at the moment, as you know, it's impossible to travel. And therefore, this will have to wait for the post-COVID-19 era.
What about study? Is Austria a popular destination in Europe for Taiwan students?
It's popular in the area of arts and music. So because Austria and Vienna, they've got a very good reputation for, culture and music. And therefore, there's quite a couple of young Taiwanese who study in Vienna music and arts. Yes.
Well, one of the initiatives your office is involved in is called the Energy Globe Award. What's that?
So the Energy Globe Award is awarded by the Energy Globe Foundation every year. And the Energy Globe Foundation is based in Austria, and that's why our office supports them. And there's both national and international awards. And what these awards are basically given for specific achievements in the area of sustainable energy and green technology. So to give you an example, last year's winner from Taiwan, that's company name is JW Eco Technology, if I'm right. And they've developed a specific type of pavement, because usually the pavement is just concrete and it's basically dead, right? And their pavement, they've got little holes, and beneath there's a whole ecosystem of microorganisms and bacteria. And this microorganisms, they make that the pavement is alive and that it can absorb CO2. And so it's a very good product if you have a major city which is hot in summer. This type of pavement, cools down and absorbs CO2. And this type of new inventions we want to highlight with this award.
What is the incentive for a foundation in Austria to give this kind of award to a company in Taiwan? Is it to promote trade, or just because it's a good idea, good for the earth, or some other motivation?
Yeah, I think the first motivation is that you would like to promote greener living. And this award has been around for, I think, almost 20 years. And so there's always those national award categories. And then the national winners, they can compete on an international scale. And the international award ceremony is usually a very big thing. So a lot of stars from Hollywood and from United Nations would attend. And it's just a way of, putting the spotlight on the importance of sustainable technologies.
And you were mentioning tourism a few minutes ago. Is your office going to be promoting Austria this year at the upcoming travel fair?
Yes, Austria will again be present at the ITF, the International Travel Fair. The booth is a little bit smaller in size than last year, but we believe it's very important to still showcase, the beauty of tourism destination Austria to the Taiwanese, because once the travel restrictions have been lifted, then I'm very sure that Taiwanese would like to travel to Austria again, and we want to promote that.
Any predictions when that might be? Or
Well, from the Austrian side, actually, I think Taiwanese are already able to travel to Austria and to Europe. They just need a negative COVID test. It's
no quarantine?
Actually, no quarantine, at least if you're a business traveler. For tourism traveler, I'm not 100% sure, but if you're a business traveler, you just need a negative COVID test to enter. The problem is, rather than once you return to Taiwan, you have to go into 2 weeks of mandatory home quarantine. And that's still something that most people don't want to do, right?
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll talk a little bit in more detail about the various bilateral trade areas and some of the programs that the Austria Commercial Office here in Taipei is working on. You're listening to Residence Messenger program on Taipei Broadcasting Station.
You said you would be right back. Of all the nights I need you most, time and time again you change, and I'm left with a certain void. You said you would make things right in matrimony and life and death. Those things mean nothing now, 'cause I'm getting out of here. You come back and let go. How should I read you, babe, if I don't know? Back and forth and we go. There's no point in talking, but for now you said you You said let's just make it right, that I was the only one. How could you say that and be with somebody else? Guess I'm tired of all the lies. Guess you never had a clue. But now I can't believe that chivalry is love. You come back and let go. How should I read you, babe, if I don't know? Back and forth, then we go. There's no point in talking, but for now you said you would. You had so many
收听台北广播电台 FM 93.1 AM 1134，让你的心情嗨起来。大家好，我是陈零九。
台北市大安区公所在109年3月22号到9月12号办理2020年走读大安文化节系列活动，欢迎您热烈参与。详情请洽大安区公所2351-1711-8901，或到区公所网站走读大安文化节专区查询。以上内容由台北市大安区公所提供。
我从年轻就烟不离手，直到跟太太结婚满10年，我想送她特别一点的礼物。想来想去，觉得身体健康就是最棒的礼物，所以结婚纪念日我决定戒烟。
因为以前小朋友都觉得先生很臭，现在他戒烟5年，烟味不见了，晚上睡觉也不咳嗽了，体力变更好。
免费戒烟专线0800636363，以上广告由卫生福利部国民健康署提供。
台北市政府提醒您，道路上路况多变化，为了你我安全，车辆行经路口时应慢看停，停让行人，行人也应遵守号志规定，并走在行人穿越道，不得任意穿越马路。以上内容由台北市政府交通局提供。
Welcome back to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Our guest today is Stefan Stantejsky from the Austrian Commercial Office, also known as Advantage Austria. Stefan helps promote bilateral trade between Austria and Taiwan. We were talking about some of your important initiatives just before the break. Another important one is the Austrian Technology Day here in Taipei. Tell us about this event.
Yes, so the Austrian Technology Day, that's actually a flagship initiative of the Austrian Ministry of Economy. And they've been organizing this type of technology day around the world over the last few years. There's been one in the past in Indonesia, in Singapore, in Moscow, I think in Israel as well. And so this year it will take place for the first time in Taiwan. We're very excited about it. And because we're still in Corona times, therefore, we will have a hybrid event. So there will be a morning session in Taoyuan with the Taoyuan city government, where we have the official speeches. And in the afternoon, there will be B2B meetings between Taiwanese and Austrian companies, where they can, try to learn more about each other and, if possible, forge some business deals.
What will some of the speeches be about at the morning event?
So, from the Austrian side, it will be about highlighting primarily those Austrian companies which participate in this event. And all of them, they're outstanding technology companies from Austria in different areas. So, including smart city, for example, green energy, also infrastructure, medtech, so medicinal technology. And from our side, we will simply, highlight the technology of those companies, and that we hope that we can forge, closer business ties with the Taiwanese counterparts.
And in the afternoon events, you said it's B2B meetings. Typically, what would be the format? Would the Taiwan company give a virtual tour of its facility to the Austrian companies, or is it just people sitting in conference rooms talking?
Yes, so those B2B meetings, because the time is restricted, it's usually just 30 minutes, and therefore it basically goes straight to the subject matter. So it's in essence, it's just two people sitting in front of the computer and introducing the product, and trying to get to know each other and see if there's any opportunity for cooperation.
So the event is more focused on helping Austrian firms sell their products to the Taiwan side, or is it an opportunity for both directions?
These type of events are always an opportunity for both sides. So in this case, we showcase the Austrian companies here, but Taiwanese, they do similar type of events back in Europe. And also in this case of the Austrian Technology Days, at the end of the day, what we want to achieve is just to, connect and bring together Austrian and Taiwanese companies. And then it could be that, the Austrian company sells their product to Taiwan, but it could also be that the Austrian company finds a supplier from Taiwan and therefore imports a product from Taiwan. It goes both ways.
Is there a specific area within the tech industry that is in high demand this year for participation in the event?
Yes, so we see also what was mentioned before, because the semiconductor industry is so strong at the moment. Therefore, we see Austrian suppliers to the semiconductor industry and to the electronics industry in general. We see that they have a great interest in participating in those Austrian Technology Days.
And how do you arrange the mechanics, the infrastructure of this, given the time difference?
Yes, so in the morning,
when you say morning, you mean the Taipei morning or the Austria morning?
No, the Taiwan morning. In the Taiwan morning, we have the in-person or the presence event here in Taoyuan City. And so the representatives there from Austria will be those people who are already here, so from my office, basically. And from the Taoyuan side, we hope to have the mayor of Taoyuan City speaking, and then we will have a pre-recorded video message from a high-ranking official from our ministry in Austria. And then we will have short, pitches, elevator pitches of the participating Austrian companies, but this will also be pre-recorded. And then we will have a Q&A for the media, and afterwards like a networking lunch. So all of this doesn't necessitate the participation of people from Austria directly, just pre-recorded. And then in the afternoon here, it's already morning in Austria, so the B2B meetings can be, made live.
And how do companies sign up, whether a Taiwan company or an Austria company, if they wanted to participate in this event?
So from the Austrian side, we've got a cooperation partner back in Austria who manages all the, the participants, and they're informed via different media, and they can simply sign up at this organization in Austria. And here on the Taiwanese side, we would like to invite all Taiwanese companies interested in Austrian technology to maybe simply, like Google Austrian Technology Days Taiwan 2020, and they will find our website, and there they can get into contact with us and just write us an email.
And you want them to tell you what products they sell, or is there any information they should include?
Yes, it would be nice to learn about, their field of industry, their area in which they're active. And also, they could tell us if they would like to participate in the in-person event in the morning. It would be nice if they come to Taoyuan, and then we have the networking reception, so we can talk to people directly. Or they could simply just participate in the virtual meetings in the afternoon. Both is possible.
Now, similar to the Austria Technology Day, the annual Computex trade fair in Taipei is also usually an opportunity for Austrian tech companies to connect with Taiwan tech companies. Tell us what you usually do around Computex.
Right. So for this year, we had plans to bring a big delegation of Austrian startups and scale-ups and investors to Taiwan to coincide with the Innovex and the Computex trade fairs. And actually quite sad, because I was in charge of organizing it. I had the whole program finished, and then we couldn't do it because of the Corona crisis. But so for next year, I want to make sure that we can, have this event, because the program has already been prepared, and there's quite a huge interest and demand from the Austrian startup ecosystem side to come to Taiwan to see with their own eyes and to try to connect with the relevant players here in Taiwan.
Well, hopefully the virus situation by then will allow for a normal Computex.
Yeah, let's keep the fingers crossed.
Yeah, and a normal visit by the corporate delegations from Austria. We've talked a lot about technology industry trade, but let's talk a little bit about some different areas of bilateral trade. Everybody loves food and drink. Tell us about Austrian food and drink or food and beverage products and which ones are popular here in Taiwan.
Yes, so there's a range of food and beverage products which are available here, and I think they're also quite popular. One of them is the pumpkin seed oil. Have you heard about that? So it's high quality, very pure pumpkin seed oil. And it's not only delicious, but it's also very good for your health. So some Taiwanese people, they just eat it for, lifestyle purposes.
Mm-hmm. So do people know this comes from Austria? I mean, is that part of the appeal, or people know that it's a high quality pumpkin seed oil if they're buying the Austrian brands?
I believe so. Actually, there's not so many producers worldwide of pumpkin seed oil. And Austria, I think, is by far I would say, biggest, at least the one with the highest quality. So if you buy pumpkin seed oil from Austria, you can be sure that it's, ecological and high quality and good for your health.
How about some other foods or beverages from Austria?
Yes, so we have different types of beverages. There's Austrian beer available here. There's delicious Austrian wines. So I think the wines from Austria, we both have very good red and white wines. So far, they're not so well known here. But in other regions of Asia, I've heard that one specific grape, a white wine grape type, which is called Grüner Veltliner, is already hugely popular. And so our goal is to also make this type of grape variety, Grüner Veltliner, more well-known and more popular here among the Taiwanese people.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. I'll ask you a difficult question. What are you doing to help promote those Austrian wines?
Well,
besides drinking.
Well, drinking is an important first step. This all goes into the export statistic, right? If you consume Austrian wine. But we also, just this week or last week, there was this international exporters, importers wine trade fair, and we had an Austrian booth there to promote the wine. And also usually at the Food Taipei, which usually takes place at the end of spring. We also usually are present with an Austrian stand, and in our portfolio, we always have also very good Austrian wine.
Now, Stefan, you're being very modest because we were talking about Austrian beverages. You mentioned wine, but you didn't mention that one brand that everyone around the world knows comes from Austria, Red Bull.
Yes, you're right. I mean, Red Bull is maybe our flagship beverage from Austria. And it's a huge global brand today, and it's also very popular here in Taiwan. And
what do you, as somebody who helps promote Austrian products around the world, including here in Taiwan, from your professional view, why is Red Bull so popular?
Well, because it gives you wings, right? I mean, I have to say, the taste is quite good, I think. There's so many different types of energy drinks on the market, but I would still say, and without being biased,
Go ahead, be biased. It's your job to promote things from Austria.
I still believe Red Bull has the best taste of all of them. And also, these days it's not only about the drink itself, but the company invests a lot in sports events, and they sponsor a lot of those extreme sports athletes. So it's and also Formula One. So it simply has become a pretty cool brand, and I think people also, to some degree, like to buy the product because they recognize the brand and they consider it to be a cool brand.
And you mentioned maybe people are not so familiar with Austrian wines, and you're helping to promote that. Of course, people know Red Bull. Whether food or technology or some other product, give us some examples of products that you've learned people in Taiwan are not so familiar that come from Austria, products that Austria does really well, but maybe people in Taiwan didn't know that.
Right. So actually, even though you said that everybody knows that Red Bull comes from Austria, in my experience, at least here in Taiwan, that's not so much the case. So most people, they're astonished when I tell them that it's Austrian, because many believe it's American.
Well, I won't take any credit for that.
So, and another one, which is quite well-known brand, is Swarovski crystals, the jewelry.
Sure, which is popular in Taiwan, but do people know it comes from Austria?
Yes, I think most people might not know it's made and it comes from Austria. They might know that it comes from Europe, but not, Austria precisely. And to be honest, most of the Austrian products that we export, many of them, they're not this big brand products like, the Germans would have, like a Mercedes or a Porsche, but it's rather, components which enter the final product. So it could be that the engine of the Mercedes Porsche is made in Austria, but then it enters the final product, and therefore nobody knows it's made in Austria, but it actually is. So yes, Austria has in very different industries a different range of high quality products. But some of them, they simply enter the final product, and it's difficult to know that they have been produced in Austria.
Well, in a way, that sounds like Taiwan, though, right? Because Taiwan is also often known for doing work for other people, because Taiwan manufactures very well, very good at controlling costs, and very high quality. But you don't necessarily see the Taiwan brand on some of these products.
You're very right. And in general, there's a few similarities between the Taiwanese and the Austrian economy. So both of our economies are not so big, but they are export-oriented. They're open, open societies and open economies. And they're dominated by small and medium-sized enterprises. So it's usually not those huge conglomerates, but usually small and medium-sized enterprises. And also what we share is we have very highly skilled labor force in both Austria and in Taiwan. So I think this comes down to the point that there's a lot of similarities, and also because of this, a lot of cooperation potential.
Give us one tip, because we're almost out of time, but give us one tip, that like a cultural tip that Taiwanese should know when doing business with Austrians.
Well, I would say, Austrians, we're between German and Italy, and therefore we're our culture, our personality is an interesting mix of German traits and Italian traits. So we can work quite structured, in a very structured way, like the Germans, but we're also, easygoing people who like to, talk and have a coffee and chat to people like the Italians. So overall, I think you don't have to respect too many rules when approaching an Austrian. And since Taiwanese are already, so kind and nice people, there's like Röting, there shouldn't be any issue. So I think Austrians and Taiwanese, we would always understand each other very well.
And where could people get more information about Advantage Austria and their upcoming events and their services? Give us the website or Facebook page.
Yes, so maybe one easy way is simply, as most people do today, just Google Advantage Austria Taiwan, and you will find our website. Otherwise, you could always write an email to our office to me, which is taipei@wko.at. taipei@wko.at.
Terrific. You've been listening to Residence Messenger Program with our guest, Stefan Stantejsky from the Austrian Commercial Office, Advantage Austria. Stefan, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Ross, for having me.
And have a great weekend.
像大雨匆匆打击过的午夜